What is up, fight fans? It is 2 p.m. in the Mile High, so you know what that means. It is time for the MMA plug on Mile High Sports. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz. You can give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. Guys, we have officially concluded the year for events stateside as far as our major organizations here. There is one more big show in 2024 that is at least worthy of putting on the radar for those of you hardcore fight fans out there. I always loved back in the day when the UFC would do these New Year's cards, but I also understand that there's a lot of competition for viewership when it comes to this time of year for, people just on trips, doing family things, so on and so forth, other just general televised events that are happening, college bowl season, all of these things that are happening throughout this timeline, which makes it just difficult for you to get your return as far as eyes on the product. When we're talking about trying to appeal to the masses, our hardcore base of the fans is only, 15 or less percent of the overall demographic or what our overall fan base is. And that's not enough for an entire show to be floated based off of what they would be putting out there. So I understand why they don't do it, and where there's a little bit more opportunity for the internationally based shows to capitalize on these couple of weeks where it's a lot more holiday based for programming and so on and so forth stateside. But before we dive into the thick of things, wrapping up a lot of this chatter for 2024 here, I want to give a big shout out to the whole crew here at the Mile High Sports Network. There is no shortage of things going on across the core foreign sports, things in the football world, both college as well as the NFL, CSU, and CU going to bowls this year. You have the Broncos with their first winning season since 2016. There is so much hope in the Mile High with Bo Nix at the helm that it's special, or it's fun to be back around an atmosphere of belief, of faith, of people coming to Denver or coming to Empower Field at Mile High and recognizing that, you know what, this isn't your rest day on the schedule. This isn't just a walk in the park for you to come in and get that win here. No, you better come and you better be ready to play now as the Denver Broncos continue to march forward. And they're knocking on the door of a playoff bid in Bo Nix's first year. So, I know that we're an MMA-based program, but at the end of the day, I also love football, and I know that there's a fair amount of you out there who also are football fans. So make sure that you check out the crew here at the Mile High Sports Network, covering all of those things with CU as well as CSU and the Denver Broncos as they continue to march forward. I know that Cody Rourke was out at the game over this last weekend. There was a lot of great content that he was able to capture, some of the sound bites and things and reflections that he was able to share following that. So as they are on the quick turnaround for Thursday night football this week with a divisional matchup against the Chargers, make sure that you give those guys a follow, because they will have all of the latest and greatest for the content with football. Also, they're covering the NBA right now, and the Nuggets gave you all that you could have asked for in terms of entertainment value. Sometimes, and I'm guilty of it myself because I'm not a big basketball fan, don't really watch a whole lot. Came into the studio here today and told the boys that, hey, I watched the last 30 seconds of that game, but I feel like I got all the entertainment value that I could have gotten from it. Sometimes I feel like the way that basketball goes, the first 3 3/4 of the game are kind of just a toss up, and you could kind of just, whatever happens, happens. And the final stretch is where the real action or entertainment happens. And last night kind of lived up to that. In the final 30 seconds, both teams were shooting lights out, going back and forth. It was imagine Robbie versus Rory 2, round 4. And this is the last 30 seconds of this game, to where the Nuggets are ultimately able to hold on to a 130 to 129 victory. Just a little bit of something to throw in there for your razzle dazzle. Make sure that you check out everything sports related with the Mile High Sports Network, magazine, podcast network. YouTube channel, website, everything along those lines. Smash that like and subscribe button wherever possible. We have no more events happening on the Front Range here in Colorado for 2024. We wrapped up this last weekend. There was an airtight boxing show as well as Battle MMA Championships. Talk a little bit more about Battle here in a minute. But in 2025, you have Sparta kicking it off with two shows in January. Sparta, a nominee for our local promotion of the year. Our award show will be coming out here and be on the lookout for the premiere of when that will be announced in the next couple of weeks. There will also be a Colorado Combat Club show that is coming back on March 1st. That is going to be the same weekend as the Muay Thai State Championships. So be on the lookout for plenty of events on the horizon. There is Colorado Jiu-Jitsu Club that is going to be back that first weekend, or I believe actually technically second weekend in February. I believe it's February 9th that they will be in return. So we'll have so much more updates for all of those shows as some of the matchups and things are on the horizon there. If we want to talk about now, the weekend recap for the final event of the year in 2024 for the UFC. Dare I say that this was one of the better fight night cards of the entire year. There was entertainment from top to bottom, and maybe that's a little bit of recency bias, and I try not to hold on to that so much, but for some of the name value that we got on the card, and take it for what you will, folks, because I am of that sub 15% in the hardcore base of the fans. But knowing some of the vets and the names on this card, I thought from the very beginning that this was a very well matched show, and the action delivered upon that. You had some rising contenders and some guys who had some questions of, hey, are they ready to take that next step? And then you had a couple of vets who came in and they were at a crossroads, essentially facing potentially one of those rising, menacing prospects. And then they went out there and showed, no, I still am that guy. I still am exactly who you thought that I was in the past. And there's a reason why I hold the status that I do. Let's go through some of these matchups here real quick. A little bit anticlimactic in the main event, just based off of it being a doctor stoppage. Dana White in the post-fight press conference said that if this was in Vegas, this doesn't get stopped. In most cases, I would agree that Vegas is going to be one of the more lenient, or they have some of the best fight docs out there to know or to allow what's going on. But at that stage of where the cut was for Colby, I don't disagree with what the stoppage was. It was right over the fold of the eyelid. It was continuing to grow, and he wasn't going to improve his position, or he wasn't going to improve the status of where he was at in the fight. It was only going to continue to get worse. The initial shot looked to have been opened up from a glancing blow where it could have been just the edge of the glove or potentially a seam. And then from there, credit to Buckley with strong boxing skills to continue to attack that specifically. And it was a deep cut. It was rough. If you saw the amount of bloodshed on the canvas, if you saw Buckley's trunks, there's a comparison that one of the social media pages put out there that showed Buckley for media day versus Buckley in the post-fight staging area. His trunks went from being all white to they literally looked like they were a crimson sheet. The blood that was on the canvas as well as on Buckley's leg, it wasn't just regular drip. It was a lot more of the thick, gooey, like plasma, heavy blood. Like he lost a lot in the process. That was a bad cut overall. I do believe that the stoppage was warranted, regardless of what Dana White said there. And I also look at it from the standpoint of it wasn't going to get better. Joaquin Buckley has arguably emerged himself as the biggest breakout fighter from 2024. Again, another candidate for our awards that we'll be having in the next week. So keep your eyes on the look for voting, so on and so forth with all of that. But as much as it pains me, it absolutely, Danny, let me pause and let me emphatically say this because you can attest to how many times through the years that I have spoken against Joaquin Buckley. It pains me to say that Joaquin Buckley might be one of the biggest breakout guys of the year in 2024. Now, granted, there's a lot of killers right now at 170. It might have had its resurgence of being one of the sleeper divisions of the entire sport as we continue forward. But again, Joaquin Buckley has went out there ever since he's went down from 185, and he has been on a tear. He has been put into big opportunities in main events, co-main events, other just marquee spots on cards where he's been given a lot of media attention. And at every turn of the way, Joaquin Buckley continues to answer the bell. I have to give credit where credit's due. I mean, whether or not every single time that I've been around the guy, I want to stick ice picks in my ears because he never shuts up or he has zero concept of what an inside voice is. The dude can fight. And it's just a testament to his overall athleticism and his acumen and just raw talent. And now seeing what he's done once he's finally gotten to camps, because he's spoken to it. His early stages, he had no structure. He bounced around to a lot of gyms and he did a lot of things learning from YouTube videos, learning from different fighters' YouTube videos. One of his early fights, he had Shane Faison from Fight Tips in his corner, who Shane Faison is famous for putting out striking instructionals. That's where he would just go watch with his buddies, just like some of the early days that guys would do with the Gracie instructionals. They would just go watch the videos, go to a park, train on each other, and then, hey, Buckley just happened to be that guy who was that gifted to be able to rise past those circumstances. And yeah, he's had some adversity throughout his career. It's not like we've never seen him lose. We've not never seen him get completely flatlined in the process. But he has continued to stick with it, continued to work harder and grow and evolve in the process. And all you can do is give the man credit because he's been thrown in there with tough tests, different styles. And again, he's answered the bell each and every time, which maybe offers the question on a larger scale too, that will maybe now, that he's mentioned that, hey, I learned how to beat Wonder Boy when I fought Wonder Boy because of Wonder Boy's instructionals. Like, are those some of the things that you start to look at that, are you giving away too much of your own recipe? Wonder Boy making comments that he struggles against boxers who have heavy forward pressure. That's exactly what he used to beat him. Maybe do you not reveal so much, or who knows? I mean, it's a tough thing to say, but again, this is a moment about Joaquin Buckley, and I got to give the dude his flowers because for as much as I have gone the opposite way, got to have the reaction here as the dude has went out there and possibly solidified himself as a top 10 fight for the next go through. He's asking for the Usman fight. Who knows if that actually happens? Usman kind of gave him the who the Connor who the F is that guy sort of treatment. That was his response on his social media and on his podcast. So we'll see how that goes forward. He's definitely not getting a title shot off of that fight. But what's next? There's a lot of exciting fights for Buckley up there at 170. In the co-main event, we saw Cub Swanson defeat Billy Quarantillo. That was a dog fight back and forth. One fight of the night. Well deserved. Billy Q, very tough veteran, but Cub is a guy who has been doing it since the WEC days. I want you guys to keep that in mind. Keep that in perspective. And for those who don't know what that means or don't understand that reference, we're talking about the WEC being an organization that was absorbed by the UFC almost a decade and a half ago. And Cub was a pivotal part of that organization when he was there and has been somebody who has been one of the who's who top contenders in the UFC ever since. He goes out there in his early 40s, he gets it done. He says that, this may be the final fight. This may be it. He's at a great place in life. He has found a lot of internal peace. He has a stable of young fighters who look to him through his management as well as coaching. And he feels like he's at a point where he is comfortable walking away if that was the last one. If that is the mindset, then I feel like what better fight to go out on than a walk-off knockout where you win a fight of the night bonus. I think that too often guys want to come back for just one more, or you get that last taste because you know what, you went in there and you found that dog again, you captured lightning in a bottle and you separated this guy from the place where time, or you sent him to a place where time doesn't exist. You got to walk off. Your hands are in victory. There's the reaction video of your kids watching from home where they're mimicking that final fight sequence where one of your boys is standing over in the living room with his hands up in the air. What a magical moment. And if that is the swan song for Swanson, what an incredible way to go out. And credit to you, Cub, for being one of the tops of the top throughout the years and being somebody who is now putting yourself in a position to give back and to offer a very special niche mindset or a very specialized niche skill set that not a lot have the experience or the time in the saddle to be able to offer. There's not a lot of people who can bring to the table when it comes to coaching and management what Cub has, plain and simple. In the co-main event, I think it was kind of a tale of the illegal shots or the fouls, if you will. And we had a couple of grabs. We had kicks to the nuts. I think that the final sequence from Manel Kopp was set up by a kick to the groin. Manel Kopp was definitely beating up Bruno Silva. And Kopp going and asking for a title fight. Come on, man. Let's be real. You just beat the number 12 guy. And as much as he was trying to talk about Izzy, well, he's imitating Izzy all the way down from the antics in the fight, his taunt, to the gyno tits. If you go back and you look at the UFC's page for every post that was Manel Kopp related over the weekend, they all mentioned how Kopp looked like he had gyno. Those who don't know what gyno is, it's typically it's a side effect of a hormone imbalance that is often triggered or caused to some sort of exogenous substance that is introduced into the body, a la performance enhancing drugs. So that is the accusation that most were making for Manel Kopp with that performance. The next fight, I mean, this one, hey, we're homers here, right? This is very first guest to the program. Deep friend of the show. I mean, beyond friend of the show, family of the show, if you will. The Hanyak, Dustin Jacoby, goes out there and gets a performance of the night winning knockout against a scary Vitor Petrino. I mean, Vitor Petrino is the guy who looks all of the parts. I'm talking about a dude who looks like he was the giant, the big dude in the beginning of Troy, just carved out of stone. Not an ounce of fat on the dude's body. Throws 100% octane heat. Everything is with bad intentions. But Dustin Jacoby is the gamer of all gamers, ladies and gentlemen. 3 weeks ago, Dustin Jacoby had a bone sticking out of his foot from an injury in sparring. To give you a bit of a reference or a visual for those who can remember back or know what I'm speaking of, if you remember when John Jones fought Chael Sonnen and his toe popped out and the skin ripped and it was holding on by a little thread and the bone was outside, that is what happened with Dustin's toe a couple of weeks ago. I mean, it was inches away from my face when he peeled it out to see, like, okay, is this just kind of a little cut or is this bad? Oh no, it went full 90 degrees sideways and was held on by just a thread of flesh. He goes to the hospital, gets it stitched up, couldn't walk for close to a week. But being the gamer that he is, he said in more than 50 plus fights in his pro career, he has never pulled out a fight, and he sure as hell isn't going to pull out of this one. We've always said, you just got to get the Hanyak to game night because he is the gamer of all gamers. And in true Dustin Jacoby fashion, he showed up and showed out on fight night. Dustin is typically a guy who is a little bit more busy when it comes to the action, pressing the fight toward his opponent, creating a few more things. But obviously, limited mobility is going to be a factor. But then having somebody who has such devastating power on the flip side, he knew that he needed to play a little bit more of the sniper in the counter game, which when that is the game plan, yes, you have to recognize that sometimes it's not going to be the most fan-friendly style because you're biding your you're biding your time. You're being patient. You're waiting for him to overextend himself or create the opportunity that you draw out from him. And that's exactly what Dustin was able to do. Needed the knockout in the third round. Let's be completely honest. First round was close, could have potentially been Dustin's, more than likely based off of the commentary assessment. He was probably down that round, loses the second round. We're in the third. We need a finish. Gets hit with a couple of hard shots earlier on in the round. Well, Petrino is heavy on the pursuit forward, and the Hanyak just sat on a deuce and put it right down the middle, folds Petrino right over the top of him, just like Kamaru Usman was able to do to Jorge Masvidal, and the rest is history. The Hanyak is back in the winner's circle, and I'm sure that Dustin is enjoying that Florida sunshine right now. He's been golfing every day since. He said, hey, even if my foot isn't going to allow me to do a whole lot of walking around or really digging in and driving, I'm going to be on the cart. I'm going to be chipping. I'm going to be putting. I'm going to be talking some smack, and I'm going to be having some coldies out here, enjoying the weather and enjoying the holiday for the victory. So congratulations to you, the Hanyak. Love you, big dog. Thank you for everything that you've done for us here. Couple more fights to speak on before we head on to the next segment. Want to give a shout out to Michael Johnson for going out there and just completely flatlining Otman Azatar. Michael Johnson is one of those guys that we said it last week. He is arguably one of the biggest enigmas of the division or potentially of the sport. Has wins against not just wins, has finishes against some of the best guys of this last generation of fighters. But then he stubs his toe against some of the fights where he should win. Or dare you say, he's a guy who at times will fight to his competition and then he stubs his toe in the process. Doesn't necessarily always capitalize when the moment should be right. And at times is so willing to go to war that he leaves himself open. He went out there in vintage menace fashion and he caught a body. That knockout even sparked a feud between a couple of old rivals on social media. That was such a clean knockout that his teammate from Killcliff, Michael Chandler, then goes and says, "Oh, best right hand or best overhand in MMA history," whatever the exact comment. I'm paraphrasing what Chandler said, and Chandler shows the clip of Michael Johnson knocking out Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier then comes back and responds and says, "Calm down, muscle milk, Mike. You're 2-4 in the UFC. Remember what I did to you," which is pretty solid clap back there. But again, that's how viral that knockout was that it got some of the biggest dogs in the game chattering back and forth from it. And one more to give a shout out. Want to talk about Miranda Maverick picking up the victory against Jamie Lynn Horth. Miranda in the post-fight press conference said that she wasn't the happiest with her performance, but hey, I understand that. And I recognize that everybody is going to be your toughest critic in a lot of situations, but I will offer this to Amanda in that, hey, Miranda, that you have to remember that winning in the UFC is hard. Winning in the UFC is not an easy thing to do. And if it wasn't something that was of the most happiness, or something that you were the happiest or most satisfied with, I get it and I understand it, but it is always better to learn off of a win. And I think that that's something that will allow her to capture some momentum going forward into 2025. Very talented fighter who trains out of here in the Denver area, and I'm looking forward to what's there for her next. Last couple of matchups, just real quick to hit on before we move along. We had a lightweight fight between Joel Alvarez and Jakar Close. Going to talk a little bit more about Alvarez here coming up, but I think that Alvarez, man, that guy he is a problem in the lightweight division with his dimensions. He is long and lanky, and he is a devastating finisher. In 22 wins, he has 22 finishes. That's a problem. And the way that he was able to finish Drakkar Close, he didn't even need to finish wrapping up the guillotine. He was already knocked out before the choke was there for the club and sub. And then Sean Woodson, we said that this fight with him and Fernando Padilla had the makings of fireworks written all over it. You have a guy who has the warrior spirit of Fernando Padilla going out there against someone in Sean Woodson, who is the pro boxer who would be willing to engage him on the feet and trading with the ones and twos. And the pro boxer went out there and he shined. Sean Woodson, a guy who now is on a bit of a streak, has a big finish to really kind of now say, hey, propel me forward next. Kudos to you, Sean Woodson. I know that he was hoping for a bonus out of that, but unfortunately, bonuses for the young cats went all to the OGs, and better luck next time. You had in Battle MMA down in Southern Colorado, just a quick couple of these to hit on because we're cutting it close here. Battle MMA, want to give a shout out to our friend of the program, Miguel Barrientos, getting a TKO victory in the first minute of the first round in his pro debut. Then Dylan Killer King, he had an exciting victory that ended by ninja choke. Big knee that started off the fight, couple of wild grappling exchanges back and forth, ends up in the front headlock position, secures that ninja choke in the first round. Again, not too far past the first minute for that victory as well. But that wraps up our talk for all of the events that have happened on 2024 as far as mixed martial arts goes in the Front Range area. But there is one other event that, at least, for those, again, we talked about, if you want to watch, it's there for you. I understand that it's not going to be the most ideal of circumstances, timeline, all of that. And that's on New Year's Eve. There's the Rizin 49 Decade event. That's going to be from the famous Saitama Arena. You have a main event championship between Chihiro Suzuki and Kleber Erbs for the featherweight championship. If you don't know those folks, I totally understand. I believe that you'll see some of the names from this card. If you watched from the Rizin versus Bellator cards in the past, you'll know some of them. But the real recognizable name, I would say, for most here stateside that's going to be on this card is the flyweight title fight, where champion Kyoji Horiguchi, who was champion in Bellator, a challenger and a fixture in the UFC for a while before he explored other options. You have Kyoji Horiguchi taking on Kazumula Zulo. That's about the two biggest or the most recognizable fights that I would say on that card. But again, there is something, if you wanted to wet that beak for mixed martial arts during the next now 3.5 weeks, call it, that the UFC will be off for the holidays. And then also on the 21st, you have Usyk versus Fury II in boxing. That is at Kingdom Arena in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The Saudis have kind of become a fixture of the boxing world, and it's understandable because of the finances. They're some of the only people who can afford the big price tags that come with boxing purses, especially with two heavyweights like Usyk as well as Tyson Fury. But I do think overall, collectively, we still can't lose sight of the actual situation of the world, human rights, all of that with the Saudis, and just don't let sport washing erase some of the harmful cultural implications that may be over there. That's as far deep as we're going to go on that one, though. To transition from that talk, let's spend a couple of minutes here, and we're going to look at some of the predictions that were widespread coming into 2024. And we'll just take a look. Did they get answered, or did they follow true? Did they not? And then we'll also take a look at a couple of matchups that I'd like to see in 2025 before we go 3 rounds to close out the hour. The first big claim was that Tom Aspinall would be the undisputed heavyweight champion. Hasn't had the opportunity. That wasn't a bad prediction had that fight ultimately been made with John. There would have only been one opportunity, which would have been November when John returned, and obviously that did not happen. Next one. Shavkat Rakhmonov will overtake the UFC's welterweight division. Had the opportunity to, would have fought for the UFC welterweight title at UFC 310 a week and a half ago, had champion Bilal Muhammad not had to have pulled out for injury. So that one, let's call that one a push because he was right there in line for that fight. Not exactly a yes, not exactly a no. Nate Diaz will return to the UFC. That one did not happen. I do think that there is potentially still a chance that they would offer a couple of those big name fights out there. Now, though, with the situation, I've always maintained that the trilogy fight with Connor's out there, but now who knows with all the Connor stuff. Nate this last weekend was in the Bay Area with Scott Coker, Gil Melendez, and all the boys with the Bay Area fights. That they're kind of bringing back that fight culture from that area where Strikeforce was such a rich presence. I like that they're bringing those shows back there and really kind of sourcing and home-growing the scene right back in that spot, especially in the wake of Bellator being out. And Scott Coker is a good promoter. No matter what Dana says, Scott Coker has done a great job wherever he's been. The next one, Israel Adesanya will return this year. Israel Adesanya did return in 2024. He had a title fight against Dricus du Plessis, and that did not go his way. Israel is booked coming up here in 2025. Very tough fight. I believe he's got Nasruddin Imavov. Ilia Topuria will take out Alexander Volkanovski. That did come true. Heartbreakingly so. Deontay Wilder will try out 4-ounce gloves. I thought that this had a good chance of potentially happening. That Deontay Wilder and the Francis Ngannou matchup that they were talking about happening in PFL would actually come to fruition because, let's face it, they don't have a lot going for them over there. They need something to try to put eyes on the product, and that would have probably been smart, but Dumb Don Davis doesn't really do a whole lot of smart things. Kayla Harrison and Chris Cyborg will finally clash. This one did not have the opportunity to materialize at the time when all of these predictions were being made at the end of 2023, very, very beginning of 2024. Kayla had not signed yet to the UFC. So that's why this one was still on the horizon. Based off of that merger with PFL and Bellator, that was something that was on the table, but it wasn't able to be put together in time for Kayla leaving for the UFC. Let's take a look now at a few matchups that I would love to see in 2025. Again, some of these are just matchups that to me, they're fun, that I want. Some of them might be matchups that they're already spoken of. They're ones that are not going to be really a surprise to you. They're widely clamored for already. Some of them might be a little bit more, okay, I'm on for that. First one is the obvious. We just mentioned it. We have to see Tom Aspinall and John Jones. That's became an undeniable fight now at this stage. Should John Jones make the walk once again, it's got to be against Tom Aspinall. Though I will maintain my position that Tom needs John more than John needs Tom. John can walk away right now today, and his legacy is solidified. John doesn't have to fight another day, and he is still going to be widely considered as the greatest. If maybe in the future someone else comes along, or he will always be a Mount Rushmore guy. Always one of the best to ever do it, no matter what anybody says. Let this recent moment of people calling him the duck, so on and so forth, while the negotiations and the standstills are happening, that's going to pass, especially in time when they look back at the body of work at what John Jones was able to do in time. He'll be remembered that, yes, he was able to go out there and beat every man that stepped in the cage with him. The next fight is Alex Poatan Pereira taking on Magomed Ankalaev. This is another matchup that has been skirted around, to delicately put it, if you will. But Ankalaev has made himself undeniable as far as the next challenger. We're going to talk a little bit more about that matchup in 3 rounds. But again, I think that this is a fight that when we're talking about the meritocracy and about keeping things true with the integrity of sport, well, yeah, those 2 fights that we just mentioned, those are 2 clear-cut top contenders that you got the fun fight. You got the fun fight with John and Stipe. You know, that's it. That was his money fight. He got the pay-per-view points. He got the MSG homecoming to fight back in his home state, all that, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. You got Pereira against Khalil Roundtree, a kickboxer who was going to entertain him on the feet. Great. He goes out there for the 3rd time in 2024, gets his 3rd knockout victory in his 3rd title defense in a 3rd main event spot. Great. But Ankalaev is now sitting out there just the same, and he has earned that title shot. The next matchup, this one is in the welterweight division, and this one, to me, it just screams fight of the night, fight of the year, fan favorite, all-time classic, barn burner, whatever you want to say in the mix that has any sort of tie to entertaining. And that's Carlos Prates taking on Jack Della Maddalena. You have 2 of the most technically elite, powerfully explosive strikers on the entire roster, and they're in one division. And they're now both within striking range of each other in the rankings to where the matchup is justified. Both have a tremendous amount of striking specialist experience, whether it be boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing, whatever, prior to transitioning to mixed martial arts and then getting into the UFC. And with the year that Prates had, like, oh my Lord. And then if Jack is able to be healthy past the couple of issues that he had this year and he's able to dial that back in, that to me is a can't miss fight. Who wins? The fans. All of us win in that fight because neither one of them has a style that says, I want to shoot or I'm going to be the first to drop and change levels. No, they're coming to take heads off. Both of them. A matchup for all of the longtime fans. I think in the bantamweight division, you have a fight where you have one guy who he's still going out there and trying to capture the glory. You have one who says he's basically 1 fight left and he's ready to call it a night. I think that makes for the perfect matchup that we finally get to see Jose Aldo Jr. take on Dominic Cruz. That's a fight that, to me, for the hardcores, I would love to see it. And yeah, that's 2 guys who, again, date back to the WEC days, who were also UFC champions, respectively, of their time frame. One at 35, one at 45. Aldo obviously has been down at 35 for the last few years. I would love to see that matchup. With all the heat between Manel Kape and Kai Kara-France, I wouldn't mind seeing them run that one back. The first fight wasn't the greatest, but they have that much heat between them to where it's been something that's came up at press conferences. It came up in the post-fight interview the other night. If they have that much animosity, let them run it back. Hamzat against the winner of Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. I think that one is kind of the same thing. It's a foregone thing. I just wish that Hamzat would be more active, but I also recognize that some of Hamzat's inactivity can also be explained by, well, the dude can only fight in a couple of places in the world based off of legal and visa issues. So that's kind of a limitation to where, hey, well, when does that fight finally get made? Well, we're going to have to probably wait until Q2 to early Q3 once they go back to that part of the world. And yeah, we'll see when that matchup finally, or when we get to see Hamzat again. Then the other matchup is in the is in the middleweight division. I think that getting to see Anthony Fluffy Hernandez take on Marvin Vettori, I think that that would be a great opportunity for Fluffy to have a jump in the rankings. Vettori was supposed to fight Brendan Allen earlier on this year, had an injury, was unfortunately he had to pull out, hasn't fought since. I think that a comeback fight against someone who is rising in the rankings, that could be in order for Marvin Vettori. And I'm heavy on Fluffy. I think that he has an exciting pace and just a grinder style that he wants to go out there. He doesn't have a one shot, one kill type of power, but he's going to be gritty. He's got a hard head. He has a pace that doesn't stop. His grappling is relentless. He's not some world champion, top tier black belt in jiu-jitsu itself, but you know who he's beat? Those same specialist top tier world champion jiu-jitsu guys. Oh, well, he submitted them in the cage once you get to mix all the things and bring them all together. So again, I think that it could be a very monumental year in 2025 for Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Couple of questions that we should ask now for the year as we close things out. Does Ilia Topuria actually move up to 155? I don't know that that's a wise choice for him. I know that he says that he walks around somewhere around 190, but he's also 4 feet tall. So dimensionally, I don't know that that's going to be the greatest choice for him. Do I think that he could go up there and compete and win fights? Absolutely. He's shown that he can win fights in the UFC at 155. The way that he knocked out Jai Herbert shows that the power can translate, but will that be applicable against some of the best and the top guys in the division? Again, you have Ilia, who is not a very long or a tall fighter, but then on the flip side, you have guys like Joel Alvarez with 22 finishes in 22 victories, who stands in there at 6'2", 6'3". That's a very bad dimensional matchup for someone like Ilia. How many legends do we see make the walk for the final time in 2024? Who might we see for the last time in 2025? Who should we see for the last time in 2025? Do you think that there are some that they're just holding on? They're holding on and they should call it. What do you guys think? Let me know on social media. Hit me up, Jordan Kurtz at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. And now we are going to, for the final time in 2024, we're going to go 3 rounds. Yeah.
It appears that there is an exhibition boxing match in the works for Conor McGregor versus Logan Paul in India in 2025. Given the recent events, are you even remotely interested?
Even before the recent bad controversies involving Conor McGregor, I would not have been interested in this fight. Why? I mean, Logan, are you down that bad? Like, you couldn't even get Jake? You had to go Logan? No, and if I'm Logan Paul, why am I attaching myself to this fight with Conor? You had the fight with Dylan Dennis, who you are still in the midst of some of these proceedings, and there was all of the lawsuit, the stuff with your fiance and your girl that Dylan said, well, who was the whole reason why Khabib jumped the cage against Conor? Dylan Dennis, who was in his corner. There is a tight connection between these guys, and if you think that some of the trolling or some of that is going to be any different, even with Conor having some of his somewhat what I believe to be fake religious redemption arc that he's trying to start right now, there's no chance. There's no chance. And if I'm Logan Paul, why am I even putting myself in this position to have my name attached to the recent events and controversies that Conor McGregor has been involved in? If Ireland themselves are painting over the murals, the Irish folks themselves are distancing themselves from the once golden boy, the face of the country, the face of the nation, why are you choosing to go and say, hey, I want to put my name on a poster right next to him? Just doesn't seem to be a savvy move.
Former UFC light heavyweight champion Jan Blachowicz said in an interview that he does not believe that top contender Magomed Ankalaev has the skills to dethrone Alex Pereira, having fought both. What do you make of his comments?
If anybody has skin in the game to be able to speak on this, then it is going to be somebody like Jan Blachowicz. He has fought in both. He has felt what both have to offer. I do think that Magomed Ankalaev presents a very difficult skill set for Alex Pereira, but I think that it's a winnable fight for Pereira. Again, I will give Jan all the respect in the world as the former champion of that division and him being in there with the both of them. If Jan was able to kick Ankalaev the way that he was, and that was, the striking that was exchanged back and forth between those two. And again, Polish power is to be respected. Don't get me wrong. But Polish power, I feel like, pales in comparison to the trauma from trauma. The trauma from trauma. I messed that up. Damn it. God, Danny, sometimes live, we blow the promos. There goes the sound clip. That would have been the shareable right there. But that's what happens when you do live programming, folks. We have one last round here in 2024. What do we have?
Fighter who asked Dana White for a contract loses his UFC tryout and his opponent was signed instead. What are your thoughts?
Congratulations to Mateus Camilo for picking up that win. It was a big victory for Camilo, represented by Iridium, in that opportunity. Obviously, there was a lot of eyes on it due to the nature of his opponent having asked for the fight in the press conference with Dana White. But I think that ultimately it worked out for the best on each side. It was reported that this young man who asked for the fight was very difficult with staff and personnel throughout fight week. So, I mean, sometimes you got, as Pat McAfee likes to say, be who you can afford to be. If you're just showing up and this is your tryout and your audition, my man, you can't go in there and act like your stuff doesn't stink and expect that everything is going to be catered for you. You are not Connor of old. It's not going to work that way with this organization and with this world. And on the flip side, Camilo did absolutely everything that he needed to say, yes, sign me. I am a guy that you have to have under this 3-letter UFC banner. So congratulations to you. Just like that, though, folks, we are all out of time. And we want to thank you all so much for tuning in again this week for Original Combat Sports Programming. Be on the lookout for the news for our award show for 2024. That's going to be coming out next week. Keep an eye on my social media, Jordan Kurtz at Comments from the Peanut Gallery on Instagram. I'm going to have a few Fans' Choice Awards as well as a couple of selections that I'll ask for your input and for your feedback to be able to vote on in the process. So just to give you that recognition that we value your input and what you love seeing with us here at the MMA Plug. But again, that wraps up our operations for any sort of event talk for 2024. There is so much to be grateful for what happened over the course of this last trip around the sun. And there are so many big things on the horizon for 2025 already that have been scheduled, and so more that we will see, and so many more of those, what moments that the boss Dana White loves to sell. I want to thank my man, Danny Bailey, for holding it down for me behind the boards once again, each and every week. Thank you to the Mile High Sports crew for being so supportive of us here. And again, thank you all for tuning in with us each and every week. I'm Jordan Kurtz. You can give me a follow along at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. This is the MMA Plug on Mile High Sports.